Hey everyone, and welcome to another live session of the Type Convo. Today, I am beyond excited to actually welcome one of the most amazing designers, podcast hosts, entrepreneurs I've ever met, and I've actually seen anyone's work online. You probably know her from her brilliant podcasts, Building Your Brand, or from her viral self-challenge, uh, 100 rejection challenge. And she turned the fear of being rejected into a game. And please let me give a really, really big welcome to Liz Mosley. I'm sure you will love this one.
Hello. Hello.
Hi,
How's it going?
doing good. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
It's a new phone. I always had some issues with Android,
Uh,
with the Instagram Live, so I have a new phone and I'm turning it off instead of just adjusting my audio volume. So, how are you doing today?
yeah, doing well, thanks. I've been looking forward to this all day.
Oh, that really means a lot to me. Thank you. So, I I really don't think I need to present you any more than I did. Most of the people really know you either from the podcast or from the challenge or from your work. Amazing work, really. But if you can put it in like a short story, tell us like how you started. Who are you? Like,
Yeah, perfect. I the other day I realized because I do so many different things, I was trying to think how I could like neatly explain it all. And basically it all falls under the umbrella of helping small businesses with their branding and marketing. So either that's through me designing their branding, me teaching them how to design their own branding, the podcast. I'd like work with various brands and create educational content. Again, all sort of follows and like falls under that banner. So I think that kind of sums it up, really. I guess how I got started. I mean, I think this is quite rare now, maybe, but I've been a graphic designer since I left university. So I think it's like nearly 16 or 17 years now. But it's probably only in the last sort of 6 years where I started my own business and specialized in branding design. Um, and like weirdly became more ambitious than I ever had been before in my career, which I guess makes sense because I think when you start your own thing, like there's a lot more motivation there to
that is
really,
definitely true.
really make it work. And I started my business after having, well, not started it, but sort of went full time with my business after having kids, and I think that motivated me a lot as well. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so there's a lot there, but yeah, that's who I am.
Okay, that's a great introduction. Let's go with something unrelated. What part of your workday would be people most surprised by? What's one thing that you do in your day-to-day life that would get us surprised?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, probably, well, I don't know if this would surprise people. Like, probably the mundane kid things that I end up doing, because I think often, like you curate like what you share online.
Yes.
And I think often, like people, I don't know, might see a post where I'm like, oh, I just spoke at this event or I was just on this podcast. And then, like, a couple of months ago, I spoke at Adobe Max and it was like really exciting. And it was all this, like, it felt like, high energy. And then I came home and I just had to go straight back into parenting mode. So I was like, giving the kids a bath, having an argument with them about getting their hair washed, all that kind of thing.
Okay.
So it's probably those things that if people saw it, they might be a bit surprised because I don't
Yeah,
talk
like
about it that often.
that's true. We don't see that part
Yeah.
online that often. Yeah. No, I was just an hour ago chatting with my nephew. I don't have kids, but I do have a nephew that is like 7 years old, almost eight. And he's like his mom is sometimes still like doing the bath and stuff, but he wants to do it on his own and if they are fighting and everything. So I can imagine that part of your life without any
Honestly,
problems.
some of the things that have come out of my mouth, like to my kids, I would never have predicted that I would say that ever in my life. Like some of them are so off the wall.
Oh,
Some of the things, it like never occurred to me that I would need to tell someone that they shouldn't do this crazy
yeah.
type thing that they've just had an idea for. So yeah, that is quite entertaining.
No, kids definitely change everything, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that was when I was researching about you, that was really, really impactful for me is how you turned the rejection into a game. Um, my podcast is like 7, 8 months old. It's just starting out with everything, and I've had so many amazing people saying yes without any problems, and I still haven't contacted Chris, so I will wait on that a bit. But I did have some, silent rejections without replies and everything. And somehow it still gets to you, it's like, but I do understand like people don't have time, they have their own lives and everything, as we all do. But tell us about the initial feelings you felt when you got rejected from Chris, and actually what led you to transforming that to a completely different thing.
Yeah, well, so the rejection from Chris, if people don't know, I asked Christo to be on my podcast and he basically said no. And it was actually like a very nice rejection. Like it wasn't, he was like, "Oh, get back to me basically when your podcast's a bit bigger." Um, but I felt really embarrassed for even having like asked him, and I remember the thoughts going through my head were like, oh, I went too big, like I asked someone that was like too high profile, and I remember thinking this didn't feel good. I'm not going to do this again. Like I had other sort of high profile guests that I thought about asking, but I was like, nah, I'm just not going to bother because I don't want to feel like that again. And what it was interesting because no one knew I'd asked him. No one saw it. It was like it was, it was in the Instagram DMs. It was private, but it was interesting to me how I still felt all of those feelings. And what I've realized over time is that when I would get a rejection, like almost subconsciously, I would start building a story in my head of like what that meant. So, oh, they don't like me, they don't think I'm good enough, like all these really negative
Yeah,
thoughts would
yeah.
start coming in. And so it was actually quite a few months after that rejection that I think what had happened was I thought of someone else who I'd love to ask to be on the podcast. And that was when I caught myself with
Oh,
the,
okay.
oh, I'm not going to do that because. And then I was like, hang on a minute, like how many things am I not doing because of this like one really minor rejection like 3 months ago? And so that was when I was like, okay, this is actually gonna hold me back in my business if I can't find a way to overcome it. And I had a friend called Katie Chappell, who's an amazing illustrator. And she had done something similar a few years earlier. And I was like, right, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to document the process. I'm going to talk about it because the other thing that I realized is that no one really like talks about their rejections, understandably, because we're
That's
trying
true.
to put our breath, like our best sort of selves forward. But I was like, every single person, every single business owner is experiencing it, like however big
Absolutely.
they are, like Christo, he's out there, he's getting rejected. And so I was like, actually, if I talk about it, it almost like normalizes it. And then we can all just be like relieved that we're not the only person going through this thing. And the other thing that really helped me was thinking, was like flipping it in my head of expecting it, almost like that getting rejected was a sign that I was doing things right because it meant that I was out there pushing myself, putting myself forward, taking risks. And so that almost like if I wasn't getting rejected, that was almost a sign that something wasn't quite right in my business. And that really helped me as well. So there was all these sort of different mindset shifts that then that resulted in. And I think, you mentioned about how you feel when you get ghosted or
Oh,
rejected.
yes.
And I don't think that feeling for me will ever go away. Like I still feel those feelings, But what has changed is how I respond to those feelings. So I recover so much quicker than I did before. I managed to catch those thoughts in my head that are very negative about myself, and I like can, I can sort of put my more logical head on and be like, oh, hang on, there's loads of other reasons why it might have been. Like you said, people are busy. There's all like
Yeah.
legitimate reasons. So yeah, so it's been a journey. The challenge was meant to be 100 rejections in 6 months, and
You failed.
still haven't reached. Yeah, I failed.
That's amazing. Hey?
Yeah. So I'm still working on it 2 years later.
No, that's amazing. It gives me an idea because I'm just like in a week or two, I'm finishing like kind of the first season of the podcast. I won't like call it a season. Everyone does it.
Yeah,
So have a small break over the summer and then do that kind of a challenge for the second part because they're really, really cool people I would like to get, and maybe even some sponsors as well to actually, at least what you said somewhere, that it's at least that it's not an expense. You
yeah,
mentioned that for when you start getting
but
first
yeah,
Florida's sponsorship. So that really gives me a great idea. But what you said about still feeling those feelings, but despite of all, you go through with it, you contact people, and I believe that's really like the most amazing thing that comes out of it because you actually dare to do it, even though you feel like, as you said, like not good enough, and I felt it as well, and maybe my work is not good enough, but those people, every one of us, each of us has their own lives, has a lot of people have kids who have work to do, have a million things to do. I almost got canceled this, like moved it to the next week because I am moving from Barcelona back to Madrid. And my house is in a huge mess right now and everything. So when people reject someone, it doesn't really mean that they don't like you or that
yeah.
you are not good enough. So that's really, really great thing you said there.
Mm. Yeah, it's helpful. And I think the other thing that helped me learn that was actually I don't know, you'll probably start to experience this as well, but I get quite a lot of pitches now for my podcast, and I can't say yes to all of them, mainly because I've already asked loads of people to be guests on the podcast. But actually thinking about the reasons why I reject people helped me remember it's usually not anything about them. It's like either that I covered that topic recently, I've booked up the schedule already. I want to try and, include lots of diverse voices. So maybe someone's
Yes,
been on recently. So like actually there's those of other kind of like very legitimate reasons. But we do all have,
absolutely.
I think we have a negativity bias, don't we? So we all assume
Yeah,
that it's the worst case
that's for
scenario.
sure. Absolutely. So you did you send 100 pictures? You did probably.
Um, I don't think I have yet. So
Okay.
I've got a chart actually, so I can work out. I think I've sent about 60 pictures, I would say.
Okay, that's amazing.
And I'm still I it currently runs about 50-50 in terms of yeses and nos. So that's
Okay,
like a pretty good rate. I had to massively slow down how many pictures
of
I
course.
sent because I got lots of yeses and then I had to like fulfill the thing that
Yeah, yeah. No,
and
I mean, it's good to know the other person's numbers, you don't really
yeah.
know it. Like you say, oh, I sent 60 of them, and then my head goes like, oh, she probably got rejected like 5, 6 times. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's something that no one talks about,
Yeah.
how many times we actually get rejected. And so that's really, really cool. Thank you for that.
No worries.
Yeah. So one of those pitches you sent was actually for Chris' podcast,
Yeah.
and he did it with you. How did it all happen? Was it actually like some kind of a validation for you, or you did not feel that part?
I think so. Once I kind of got to the 6 months and I kind of like realized that I'd learned all these different lessons and um, like a lot, it sort of didn't kind of go how I expected. I thought I was going to get to 100 really easily, but obviously that didn't happen. I thought, you know what, one of the things to pitch to that I think it'd be really fun to have a conversation with Chris about it. And at that point, I hadn't told anybody. I'd said that I'd been rejected, but I hadn't told anybody who it was. But then I was like,
Okay.
if I actually tell him, then I can actually tell that story, like sort of more
Yeah,
publicly.
yeah.
So I sent the email and like pitched to be on the podcast. And then I didn't hear anything for 3 months. So I just
Oh,
assumed that that was a rejection. But then amazingly, his podcast producer got in touch with me, and was like, oh, sorry, we've had such a backlog of like pitches to get through, all this kind of stuff. But we'd love, Chris is really up for it. We'd love to go for it, book in a time. And so that was really cool. And it was just a really fun chat. Like, Chris doesn't take himself too seriously. I think he really enjoyed the sort of like part he'd had to play in this like very
yeah, in
heavy
the
role.
role.
And like, we had a good laugh about it. But we ended up having this really great conversation, where he sort of like really probed into some of the lessons that I'd learned. And I guess, like as someone who's further along in their business and their career, like he had some really helpful insight to give me back. Like at the time, one of the things that I was realizing is that because I'd been pitching for so many things, I'd also just kind of been saying, I was in a very like yes mode, like any opportunity that came my way, I was like, yes, let's do it. It was like my year of being sort of very visible and doing all the things. But then I got to a point where I was like, okay, this actually isn't sustainable. So the next step is I actually have to be really like strategic and really like careful about what my yeses are. Like be much more I guess, yeah, willing to turn opportunities down and be very selective about what my yes is. And he was like, yes, that is the big lesson. And, like he could really like share his insight into that. So yeah, we had a really fun conversation. And then the other thing that really sort of tickled me about it is that this ended up being way more beneficial to me than him being on my podcast. Because obviously, like him being on my podcast, it would have attracted listeners, maybe it would have got more downloads, but he has 2.5 million YouTube subscribers. So actually, I got to share my experience to a much larger audience.
That's
Um,
amazing.
so yeah, so it turned out to be a great experience for me and just really enjoyable as well. Like he was really fun to talk to. So that was really cool.
No, that's amazing. And what you said about actually you now rejecting things, not because you don't want to do it, but
No.
because it's simply impossible to do all of it. And it reminds me a bit like before I started type design a couple of years back, I had my own agency and designed a lot of people around working. And at one point, we really had to stop accepting every project. You cannot do it all because you cannot employ that many people right at
Yeah.
once. And it felt really weird. Like we've been accepting all of the projects and everything. And then you come to a point where you see, like, well, we cannot do this enough. It's not anymore. It's just, and then you go selectively through things. So even today, like, I get on behance and on my email like some uh questions. Can I do a logo or can I do a branding? And I would really love to, but with all the things that I have planned and with all the podcast and typefaces that are coming and everything, it's just impossible to do anything, to accept anything in the next 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I also talked to a friend recently about her actually rejecting a client because they were not a good fit.
Yeah.
Well, which is another thing. And that's really, really one of the lessons I believe a lot of creative designers and creatives actually need to learn. So
Mm.
it's not always like, okay, let's finish the project and do everything. Sometimes you have to stop a bit, pull yourself back and just, say no when you are not able to do it.
I think saying no is actually like one of the most powerful things that you can do. It's one of the hardest lessons to learn because
True.
like I think often like we've all kind of been conditioned, I think, as creatives, with this sort of starving artist mentality. Like we all just sort of have that built into us. Well, not everybody, but I think a lot of people still have that fear of, like, when's the next project coming in? Like, is the work going to dry up? Is the next thing going to come up? And that can lead to us saying yes to too many things. But actually, someone explained it to me where it was kind of like your no allows space for something that's possibly better. So actually, like, your yes to one thing, whether you realize it or not, is a no to another thing. So actually, you've got to be really careful about what you say yes to, and think about what you say no to. And that really helped me, because then it sort of got me out of that fear mindset of like nothing, no opportunities gonna come along again, and actually reframed it for me as, no, I'm allowing space for the right client, something that's more aligned to come, in that place. But yeah,
So
it's hard. It's a scare. I think you're
it's the
totally right.
scary part,
It's
yes.
a hard lesson, and it is one that we all have to learn, I think, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And especially nowadays when there's so much uncertainty and especially in digital world, and then you have everything that's happening in the real world, and with then coming the AI and everything. And
Yeah.
we just have to, learn things and learn when to say no, but and actually leave the fear, as you did, leave the fear of no new projects.
Yeah.
Just as we have a comment, allowing space. Yeah.
Mm,
So opening space for new things. So that's really great thing you said there.
yeah.
Okay. So did being a guest on Chris's podcast change things for your podcast too much, or
No, not massively. Like, it didn't change things for my podcast. I think it like did really help me in terms of like getting in front of a new audience. Someone actually asked me the other day if it brought me work, and I don't think it did, in the
okay,
sense that his audience isn't my target audience. It's a lot of designers, so they wouldn't be looking for a designer, but I think it did sort of help my visibility. I think also, his podcast is really well known. He has a great reputation. And so I think it helped in terms of, not that I've got like a typed out CV, but almost, like being able to say to other people, oh, well, I've been on a guest on this podcast, like it's that kind of endorsement, or that kind of like kudos that you have from being on that then you can leverage to get other opportunities. So for example, if I'm pitching to speak, I would link to that podcast episode. There's a YouTube version so people can watch the video. So I think that those are the ways that it really, really helps me. And I mean, like, his audience is massive. So yeah, like a whole new bunch of people find out about you. Um, and I had lots of really nice messages. Like, I think because it's quite a vulnerable topic, and it was less me teaching something and more me sharing my experience. I think people like really resonated with it, like could could sort of like see themselves in the situation because they had experienced the same emotions. And so yeah, that was really nice.
okay. Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, new experiences and new things and new feelings. So absolutely great. Um, did you have any major speaking like the one you had for Adobe Max? How did it feel when the first one came?
The first speaking
Yes.
engagement, it felt really good. It's interesting because when I was younger, before I was sort of working sort of like full time as a graphic designer, I did do some public speaking. I think it was like at an Oxfam conference, and it was talking
Okay.
about something completely unrelated. So I did have some public speaking experience, and I really enjoyed it. And then I went into design, and there was never really sort of any, not that there wasn't any opportunities, but it wasn't really anything that I sort of pursued or looked into. And then I basically got asked to do this really, it was like, it wasn't even a talk. It was literally at an event to just get up and talk about my experience for 5 minutes about something. And someone there saw me, and he runs an event and a conference. And so he um initially asked me to do a workshop for his membership, so like an online thing. So I
Wow.
did that, and he liked it, and they liked it. And so then he asked me to do like the closing keynote at his conference that he did. So that felt amazing because I think at that point I realized that I thought this was something that I'd love to do more of. But I think it's that thing, it's like having that person who's sort of willing to take a risk on you and who's willing to give you that opportunity. And he really, yeah, he obviously like trusted me and he gave me that chance. And what's interesting, so what was amazing about that conference is that all of the talks were recorded. And at the time, I was like, oh, yeah, that's nice. But I didn't think it was like that big a deal. But now what I've realized is that most other speaking opportunities I've gone looking for, they want to see examples of you having spoken on stage. So now I have this recorded talk that I can send people.
Amazing.
And what I'm realizing is that, like him taking a risk on me having that first opportunity has massively helped me in terms of getting other opportunities. And then they all build up. So like, speaking at Adobe Max, I've got the recordings of those. So then I can, show those to other people. So I guess you're sort of like building up this bank of like proof, that you can do this thing, that you're a safe pair of hands, that, they can sort of trust that you're going to deliver. So yeah, so I'm really his name's Paul. He does a conference called Marketed Live. So I'm very, very grateful that that he trusted me to do
Oh,
that.
that's
Yeah.
that's really important. That's true. To have people who are open for new people in that
Yeah.
kind of space.
And actually, having spoken to him about it since, like one of his sort of big values for the event was always. So I actually interviewed him about it for the podcast, and one of his values for the event was always, like diversity, getting different voices in, and he does a very good job of like curating all the different people. And so I think, people are looking for that. People are looking for, people with a new story that people haven't heard. There's lots of speakers who've done the circuit and who you might have heard, do the same talk, like multiple times. And so I think, yeah, it's nice when people are looking for something new and willing to platform, like new people. So yeah, it was cool.
That's cool. And then you recently were a closing keynote speaker at Adobe Max.
Well, I don't
It's
know,
like
not closing keynote,
no?
but yeah, no, I got to speak at Adobe Max, and
Oh,
yeah, I mean, it was amazing. That was definitely the scariest thing I've ever done in my
really?
yeah, but I had an amazing time, and I think it went down really well. So yeah, it was really fun.
Okay. Why was it so scary?
Um, I think partly because it's Adobe, so it's not like, it's a huge company that is trusting you to represent them and to get on stage. The other reason is because the stage was absolutely massive. So, like, just the scale of the event is huge. So there was, it was like the big main stage, like the screens are just absolutely humongous. There's like 750 people there. So that was
Wow.
that it was big. The production, was huge. The other thing, which I had never experienced before, it was a silent disco style conference. So everyone was wearing headphones. And that is like a very different experience as a speaker because
Okay.
basically your voice isn't projected on the stage. It's just its normal like volume.
Oh,
So you're
wow.
speaking to this huge room of people, but it's almost like you're just sort of there like whispering into a microphone.
Okay.
Um, I mean, thankfully that was okay, and I got used to it really quickly. But it's just all those things, where it's something new, it's something different. I think the thing that really encouraged me is that, people I spoke to before were like, it's normal that you're nervous and it means that you care. And thankfully, the nerves were like, totally manageable. They didn't impact. The way that I assess it is if I can still enjoy the day, knowing that I've got my talk coming up, then the nerves are manageable. If I have to like sit in a room on my own, like
Okay.
then
Then we have a problem.
too much. But I was able to like really enjoy the day and I had a good time. But what was interesting is I was actually doing two sessions and it kind of like messed with my head slightly because I was having to store in my head these two talks and not
Okay.
forget either of them. So as soon as the first one was done, it felt like the whole thing just slipped out of my brain and then I could just focus on the next one. So that was interesting.
Oh, Yeah, that's quite interesting, definitely. So apart from the conference, Adobe Max, you are Adobe Express Ambassador.
Mm,
And as someone who never used Adobe Express,
mm.
I didn't. What would you tell me to do and why would I do it? I mean, for everyone like listening, it's not
It's not sponsored.
sponsored, it's not sponsored, but Adobe, if you want to do it, we
Yeah.
have no problems. So what would you say?
Um, okay, from with my branding hat on, from a branding perspective, I work with a lot of small businesses who it's not feasible for them to basically go to a designer for every design need that they have. They just don't have the budget for that. So I tend to create the branding for them, but I want to then give it to them in a format that they can use really easily. They don't tend to have InDesign, Illustrator. They might have Photoshop, but I don't tend to create my designs in Photoshop. But Adobe Express, because it's from Adobe, integrates with all of those tools. So basically, I can take anything, anything that I've designed in Illustrator, InDesign, I can just drag it into Adobe Express and then I can save it as like templates for them. We can have like a shared project area. So for example, I've got a client at the moment, we have this shared project. All the like branding files are in there, there's like photography, and then I can basically create her social media templates in that project, and then she can just go in and use them. So that's why it works really well for me and my workflow. So I think it does depend on, what sort of clients you have, what their needs are. But it saves me loads of time because I can basically take a library that I've created in Illustrator and just convert it into a brand kit with a click rather than having to upload everything, if that makes
Okay.
sense. So it's a good process for me personally. And then sort of going back to my intro at the beginning, because so much of my content is around helping small businesses with their branding and marketing, like that is exactly what that tool is for. It's meant to be really accessible, easy for them to use. Like if if you've never opened InDesign or Illustrator before, it's overwhelming. Like it's
Yes.
years. I mean, like there's still so much I don't know, but it's taken me years to learn those tools, and so um, yeah, it fits with my. It felt like a really good fit because it fitted in with my sort of like wider mission of like how I wanted to help small business owners. Yeah, and it's a tool designed for that basically.
Okay. Okay. And apart from all of that, there's so many things you do. If I touch each single one of them with a small, short question, it will take us like 2 to 3 hours to go through all of it. So I'm just like jumping from thing to thing. But
Yeah, I love it.
you also do branding, as you said, and the thing that is really interesting to me that you do this kind of a course that you teach people how to actually do their own things, which is really amazing to me
Okay.
because in a way, coming from a background where I was a brand designer and with agency and everything, and when you actually teach people and when you involve them in the whole process, it feels a lot more personal for them
Mhm.
when they have the whole brand in the end and not just delivered by a designer. And I mean, they obviously have a say in that as well. But I believe that when they do it with the designer and with themselves, it feels a lot more closer and a lot more personal for them. So tell us more about it.
Well, so I when I first launched it, so I think I've run it 6 times now, and it was probably like 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago that I first launched it. And I had so much anxiety about launching it, mainly because I really worried about what other designers would think, because I didn't want them to think, that I was basically taking work away from designers by teaching businesses to do it themselves. But the reason that I started it was because I was having a lot of clients get in touch with me and I would give them a quote for branding, and it was just out of their budget and they couldn't afford it. And I do think that there's a group of business owners who have just started or like at early days in their business and they don't have the budget to outsource that, but they still need branding. Like they still need something to get started. And like, I don't know if you know, you'll totally get this, I think, but if your brand doesn't look good, I mean, I've experienced this myself with my website, you know, where I neglected my website, and every time someone asked me, I just like a cringe, like I didn't want to send it to them to it because I just hadn't updated it for ages, and I hated the design, and it was just horrible. And so I wanted to help those business owners have like a stopgap, you know, like something that they could use that they felt confident about, that they felt proud of, with the knowledge that eventually their businesses would grow and they'd get to the point where they'd be like, yes, now I'm ready to outsource to a graphic designer. And I also think that it's not always right to invest in branding right at the start of your business. I think if you're a product based business, maybe this is slightly different. But if you're a service based business and you aren't super clear on what it is your business is gonna be like, and you're actually like trying lots of things, maybe you pivot a couple of times, maybe you try something and then realize actually I don't really like that much, so I'm gonna move in this area. You kind of need to work out all of those kinks before you invest so that you can get something that's like really strategic, it's aimed at the right people, you know, it's going to appeal to your target audience. And so I personally think that sometimes it's better to just start with something simple and basic that you created yourself. Do all of that like experimenting, trying things out, getting really clear on what your business wants to be about, and then invest. So that's why I felt like the course, that was the group of people that I felt like the course could really help. And then actually, I got to a point where I was like, this isn't taking work away from designers because these people aren't at the point that they would invest in a designer, and
Absolutely.
but they will be in the future, and then they'll go to those people. So this is almost like helping them get to that point, helping them grow their business to a point where they can invest yeah, in designers. But I did stress a lot about how it would look and what other designers would think about.
Yeah. No, I can imagine it, but it's so true that if you are not in, I don't know, photography business, or you don't have a lot of packaging, as you said, and if you really do not need a super huge and website and branding project, it's really, and if you're just starting out with a small business owner, you don't have so much money to invest. You do not have the resources, you do not have the people, and you are still figuring things out. So that's really great. I mean, and what you said about the website, I actually no personal website for my type fonts, for my type foundry until 2 months ago. So I've been designing fonts, publishing them on Create Market, other platforms, on Behance as well. And I had some kind of a website that was on a Gumroad,
Mhm.
and it was kind of a, my website, but since being a platform, it's so limited to editing. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm creating all these good things. Like my website is like, you don't really expect that kind of a website from a type design, from someone who was a designer before it even did websites. But I really had no time to do it. It's just, you put it somewhere else, you push out new products, you have clients, you do things, and then you just feel too embarrassed at the end that you have to do it. And things changed for me so much after I did a new website, and it's so amazing. But I'm just like putting it on the shelf right now and doing other things at the moment, probably until it feels like embarrassing again in a couple of years. Like, oh my God, I didn't put anything new there.
I feel like I just lurched from embarrassment to embarrassment. So for ages it was the website. Then I finally updated that and I was happy with that, but I didn't have a portfolio on it. So for the longest time there was no
Oh,
portfolio. And then now I've only just put that up. That was like the next thing that I was embarrassed about. So then yeah, eventually it gets too intense and you're like, okay,
yeah.
I have to sort this out.
That's true. And it's so hard to like work for yourself because I mean, I believe that's for all designers out there. Like I've been talking to a lot of people recently. Scott, one of my previous guests, he said to me like, "Oh, I outsourced it right away. Like I knew it will take years."
Yeah.
And then he did it. And I worked on mine like for 8 years. So I absolutely understand that part.
Yeah, I agree. I think all designers struggle with designing for themselves because, yeah,
That's
it's a
absolutely
challenge.
true. Yeah. 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 We like to like go into all these small details and in the essence, they are really not that important. You just
Um,
need to put the portfolio right on there.
yeah, totally. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, don't we? Because there's just
Absolutely.
this real feeling that it has to be perfect because it was like when I got married and I designed my own wedding invites. I felt
Oh,
so much pressure because I was like, everyone knows I'm a designer. They're expecting something like
like,
absolutely incredible.
okay.
And I was like, this is so stressful.
No, you shouldn't have done that.
No, I should have outsourced
No,
that.
absolutely, yeah. No, well, that's a lesson for me. Like, if I do get, I mean, I'm married as well, but if we do get to some point of renewing vows or
Yeah,
whatever, outsourcing
absolutely.
things, absolutely, yeah. Not making that mistake. Okay. Okay. So, apart from all of these things, what do you think was the thing that actually most changed you and your business in the last couple of years?
In the last couple of years. Do you know what? I actually think so. I was writing a blog post about this the other day. I actually think it's the things that have gone wrong. Um, I think that often, like, and this kind of goes back to the rejection challenge a bit, but I think it was maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, I had a couple of clients, who weren't happy with some work that I did. And unfortunately, the two instances happened back to back. And it really knocked my confidence and it really impacted me. And there was like, there was like looking back on it now, there was like reasons on both sides, like why it didn't work and why something went wrong. But those two instances like improved my business more than anything else because I learned so many lessons from them. So I improved my processes, I improved my communication. Like I was able to identify all the things that I had done wrong in those scenarios. And I was like, I am going to improve this so those things never happen, pretty much hopefully never happen
Right,
again.
right again.
And like at the time, it was horrible. And it was quite early on of like me running sort of my own business. And it took me a long time to recover. Like it really knocked my confidence. Again, I think it was compounded by the fact that, like, I think if it had been one of them, it would have been fine. But because there was like two at the same time, it just made it so much worse. But actually, now I look back and yeah, it was really hard, but I learned such good lessons and I think so often we do whatever we can to avoid those hard experiences. And the sort of painful lesson that I'm learning is that those are the things that improve our businesses the most. And I think, like I was saying with the rejection challenge, I think if we accept that this is part of the process, like we're not going to show up as this perfect business owner who knows everything right from the start if we can accept that and we can see the whole sort of process of running a business as, this learning experience, experimenting, trying things, it just makes it so much easier for us mentally to like learn from those mistakes and not let them completely like derail us or make us give up or whatever. So I think, yeah, it's been the hard thing. The things that haven't felt good, like being rejected, those are the things that have taught me the best lessons. And like, I mean, I still don't want to feel like that, really, but I'm trying to get better at just being like, this is part of the process and this is an opportunity for me to learn. And I guess I'm getting quicker at like finding those lessons. And that helps me to recover from whatever it is that's happened quicker. And I think like I don't know, but maybe I'm a bit more extreme with this, but I think we just are so hard on ourselves and we put so much pressure on ourselves. And
Absolutely.
I like really beat myself up about like silly little mistakes that I make in my business. But one of my absolute favorite things is when you see a massive brand like send out an email with like wrong date or like they put the wrong name. And I'm just like, okay, if this huge company can do it, it's honestly gonna be fine if I do it. It's not a big deal. And like yeah, it's annoying, but I'll get over it. I'll
Yeah, yeah,
recover. So yeah, I think that has been one of them. And then I think, am I allowed to? Another,
absolutely.
I think another,
This one was a wonderful lesson, so go on.
I think another one is to work out what your own goals are. Because one of the things that I noticed myself doing like I consume a lot of content online. I follow a lot of people. There's loads of people that I admire. And, often people talking about what their goals are, how much income they're earning, what they're doing. And I am very prone to like absorbing other people's goals and thinking that those should be my goals. Like, oh, so and so's doing this. Oh, I need to do that too. And so I'm working on trying to get clear on what my goals are and why they are and get less distracted by what everybody else is saying and what they're doing. Um, so yeah, that's my other one.
Well, that's really important, but I will just go back to that email you said
Oh,
with the wrong date and everything.
oh yeah.
Um, 2 weeks ago, I published a new font and then I sent a newsletter like thousands of people. And then I figured out in the end that I forgot to change the links for the product. And then, once you send it, it's over, it's done. And I was like, oh my gosh, should I resend it? And that was like the whole day was for me. Oh my God, I was thinking what to do. Then I published on social media for people. Just ignore the email. I will send another in a couple of days. Don't want to spam. But tomorrow, a huge company, like where I was subscribed and got a newsletter and everything, and their link was completely wrong. So I was like, okay, I should not stress about that at all. If they can do it, I can do it. It happens. It's part of the lessons, and so yeah, we definitely put a lot of pressure on us, and not just because of the things we do, but also what you said because of social media, and we see all these people doing amazing things, and we want to get better and we compare. It's just impossible not to compare. When you see numbers, when you see likes, when you see earnings, when you see like, oh my God, he has 2.5 million people on YouTube. Like, I don't even
Oh,
know like what are my numbers.
yeah.
So it gets to us, but I believe it's somehow just part of the journey. We are all a bit different, even though we are in pretty much the same industry of being created, but each road, each path is different. So that's kind of important thing to know, like somewhere here to have it always.
Yeah, totally. And I don't know, not to send us off on a tangent about AI, but I do think that actually where AI is so prevalent at the moment, people are craving that like human connection and seeing someone make a mistake is actually like really human and really identifiable and people relate to it. And I did one, it wasn't a links one, but I sent out an email so when I write all of my emails, I write them to my best friend so that I feel like I'm talking to
Oh,
someone
okay.
that I know. So I start them all in my drafts saying, Dear Lois. And then what I'm supposed to do is when I put it into my mailing thing is I delete the Dear Lois bit, but I forgot to do that. So I sent an email out to everybody
Everybody
said
with their life,
to Dear
that's
Lois. And so then what my friend had this really good idea where she was like, send them an email and explain why you do that, like turn it into a teaching moment. And she was like, explain that it's because you want it, you want them to feel like you're writing to a friend and like it makes it more casual and all this sort of stuff. So I sent out the email and I had so many lovely replies from people who were like, yeah, we did notice and thought it was a bit weird, but this is so cool to hear the reason why. And so actually the mistake turned into like a brilliant opportunity to connect with people. And so I think, you really can often turn these things around and use them in a really positive way.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, I agree with that. I wish I come up with that, like, but for the next time when I send something wrong, I know what to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. You've mentioned a couple of times those two projects were at the same time and they didn't go too well. Um, did that kind of like when you actually stop the project and not work with the client anymore, do you ever feel like creative block after that? Does it actually affect your creativity later on to actually make new things and create new stuff?
Yeah, I think it really did because like as I mentioned, it really knocked my confidence. And then I think that did have an impact on like how I showed up. I think it affected me almost for like, I would say it was about a year. Like, and I think, I had good projects after that. And, it wasn't like everything, I couldn't be creative or anything, but I almost had to like build up that bank of proof again, that I could do this, that I was like good at what I was doing, that people did want to work with me and all that sort of thing. And so I think that did have a huge impact. And like I said it, like it did help me improve my processes. So like I actually, sort of went back and had a look at my creative process and sort of like really rethought like how I did that, how I was going to present work to clients and all that sort of thing. So that definitely like helped get me out of the creative block. But yeah, it did have an impact. And I do think that we go through phases. Well, I don't know, maybe other people don't, but I definitely go through phases where creativity seems to flow quite easily, and then other times where it just feels like I get there, but it just feels a lot harder to get there.
Absolutely. No, I did as well. Probably a lot of other people have those flows, and when it just, as you said, it gets harder to get something really, really good. So
Yeah.
I understand that part. Now, well, I have a couple more questions. I would have a lot of them, but it's 10
Yeah,
minutes
it's gone
here.
so fast.
Spain.
Yeah.
It's so good. And I love talking to you. And I would definitely love to have you once again back, like for maybe the second season. I'm pitching it right now.
Yeah.
So don't reject me right now. No?
It's an immediate yes. An immediate.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I would just like to, we've talked about some serious things, for desire, being rejected and doubting yourself. But let's go to a bit more fun stuff. What did your kids teach you about how to run your business? Was there any lesson from them that you actually figured out that helped you to turn things around?
Yeah, I think so. I think that because of the sort of age they are, they're still very much like exploring their creativity. And like I love to do creative things with them. And I think I just get a reminder to go back to simplicity and to go back to using my hands. And so like sitting down with them, like one of them will come up with some idea of this thing that they want to make. And it's like, okay, how am I gonna, let's go find some toilet rolls or whatever it is we need to like construct this thing. And I think what I have like really benefited from in my creativity having kids is that I get a glimpse of the world through their childlike eyes. And I think often our creativity, I don't know, it does get affected. It gets affected by like, you know, people, the world telling us that, things have to be a certain way. You must color in the lines. You must, that's the classic one. You must do all of these things. And so it really helps me to go back and to like to see it from a much simpler perspective. um and yeah, like they love doing creative projects with me, and I actually like try and involve them sometimes in like work projects that I do. So like you'll appreciate this as a font designer, but we or a type designer, I should say. We there's like a really simple type tool called Calligrapher. I don't know if you've come across it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I just printed out the sheet that, or not, I didn't print it out actually. I just put it on my iPad and I was like, write the letters. And we made fonts out of their
Oh,
handwriting and they
that's
thought it was like the
amazing.
coolest thing ever. And like they're barely legible, like you couldn't really use them for anything, but they absolutely loved it. And so it's like really fun for me to be able to like take my skills and my work and then like share that with them and get them, they get to make these really cool, fun things. Like they love making videos. Like my son's really into stop motion, like also letting like following their interests. So he's really into stop motion. And so I found this app and I give him my phone and he goes off and he like does it.
Oh, wow.
It's just really cool to have, yeah, I guess like have little people who are looking at things so differently to inspire you and make you look at things in a different way.
Oh, that's so good. That's so true. I mean, it was so fun what you said, like coloring straight lines. And because my nephew, God help him, if he starts art school or something similar, but he never draws in like straight lines, never inside lines.
Yeah,
It's all just like we tried, I tried, his parents tried explaining, but it just doesn't work.
yeah.
But I guess maybe that's good, doing things outside of
Mhm.
the lines and the borders and stuff. So we'll see how he goes. So I get that part definitely. But it's interesting what you said about fonts. I definitely could do that. He's coming over this summer for a couple of weeks, and that's definitely a
Yeah,
cool
it's
thing to try. Ah,
a fun activity. And I think like there's something really special, I think, for kids to for them to create something and then almost see it in your work environment. And then it's sort of, yeah, it's just like cool that they were so sort of mind blown that they could now type in their own handwriting on the
yeah, yeah.
canvas.
No, they probably feel like way older and like, oh, look what we did. And
Yeah,
no, I definitely get that. Amazing. Well, thank you for the idea, definitely.
yeah.
And two more questions. One not related to kids, but something apart from business, but relates to business. Um, if Liz Mosley brands had a perfume, what would perfume be like?
Oh, that's like a great, oh, that's such a good question. I think it would actually be like, you get those perfumes and scents that are very um androgynous, like they're not particularly feminine or masculine. I don't
Okay.
know why, but I absolutely love those scents. It would be one of those, like something that's like a bit like, I don't know if these are the right terms. I don't know much about perfume, but
Yeah,
like
me neither.
a bit like sort of like woody and smoky, like not particularly sort of sweet, but yeah, something
Okay.
somewhere in the middle, I think.
Okay. Okay. That's a cool answer. Yeah. And now again, a bit more serious. If you could give just one advice to people who are listening to you today, tomorrow, at Adobe conference, whatever, what would that one advice be?
It would be to get used to being sorry, it would be to get used to discomfort. So like if you want to start something and you're thinking, oh, I don't want to do it because someone's going to think that I'm cringe, or I don't want to start because maybe it'll fail, or I don't want to do that, that you've got all these different reasons why not to do things. But actually, if you just start, and yeah, you might feel all of those things, but if you can get used to feeling a bit uncomfortable, you can push through those things. And then you get over that thing, you move on to the next thing that feels a bit uncomfortable, you get over that thing. So actually, to get used to being uncomfortable so that you don't get held back from achieving your goals. So basically, like you can pursue the goal knowing that you can tolerate discomfort. And so it might, it might not feel great at the beginning and it won't feel easy and there'll be lots to learn. but you'll have that resilience to move through that and to get to the sort of like next stage, to keep going. I like for me, it's definitely been like anything that I've really wanted, I've had to go through that feeling of like, yeah, this doesn't feel comfortable. This is new to me. This is a bit scary. What's so and so gonna think? Are they gonna think that I'm cringe? I think people describe it a lot with like content as well. Like people are sort of quite scared to show up online, which I totally get. Like people might judge you, but actually, like you don't want to let those things hold you back from the thing that you really want to do.
Abs-
And I think if you can get used to that discomfort, then it'll help you get to that point quicker.
that's so true. For instance, I never showed my face, not even in a newsletter or profile picture on Instagram or anything, until I actually started the podcast last year. And it was like the first time for me to do a live talk, like,
Mhm.
and to actually do it. And I wanted to do it for a long time, but you have all those feelings like, oh, what will happen if this happens? And like, you just go spiraling down. And yeah, I am definitely grateful I did it. And there are so many good things. So that's an amazing advice, because in the end, if you go against that fear, against discomfort, it's usually worth it. Sometimes it might not be, it might be a failure of a project or something, but usually it's worth it. Thank you for that, Liz.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. And thank you for everything today. It was really fun. Like an hour passed
Yeah,
so fast. And
so fast. And thank you for such great questions. I loved answering.
thank you. I was reading the other day about Debbie Millman and how she prepares for her guests. And she would like have pages, like 40, 50 pages written about people. And then I started preparing myself like that, and it's so hard. Even though we have everything available online, like you can listen everything, but it's so hard to actually prepare even the questions that haven't been asked before. There's so many. Like, I didn't want to come up today and ask you the questions that you've answered.
Mhm.
I mean, some of them you did because it's part of who you are, but I wanted to do some things that you haven't been asked, so
Yeah,
that if I succeeded in that, I
you
did my
did, you
best.
did.
Thank
I mean,
you.
no one's ever asked me what sort of perfume I like to be.
Okay, well, okay,
I love that. Yeah,
amazing.
no, they were really good questions. Very fun.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you. Yeah,
so
you're so
much.
easy to chat to. I loved it.
Well, we definitely should repeat this for next year. Well, the second season and the things that come very soon. And I want to thank you once again for accepting and for being here with all of us and for being my guest. That really means a lot to me. So thank you.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for listening. And I will be publishing this as a podcast very soon. So thank you everyone and see you soon.
Bye.
Bye bye.